phenomenal speakers. Dr. Mark Hyman spoke at it, etc. They're going to break down information as if you are, because you're their audience. So they're going to break down information, share resources, share slides, and use language that they know you understand because you are the audience in this room.
And what's interesting is when you look at the different videos, you can see the different engagements in those videos, and you can start saying, okay, this video did really well. What are they doing in the video? What does that video look like? How did they kind of break it apart? What does it say? Because I've seen those videos and they're just random actors that I know that they just paid to say these things.
It's like, how many businesses do you have? Like, wait, these are all the same, but they have all different names. Like, why? Like, the clinic was different than the acupuncture part of their business was different than the IV drip portion of their business, which was different than their supplement line. It's like, there was just no consistency. And it's like, I'm
Right.
confused. I do this. I care about this. I can't imagine a patient's perspective. Welcome to the Money Medicine Podcast, where we discuss strategies to grow your healthcare business, tools to accelerate that growth, and how top practices and pharmacies are executing and winning. All right, we are back with podcast number 21. We are coming off a great event, and so we wanted to put together a podcast today, our second one of 2024, but it's timely because it was kind of came from some takeaways that we had from a recent event that we went to, but ultimately we are going to be discussing effectively communicating your message so that people actually listen and that you can actually attract people to your business, whether that's for product or for services. And this, like I said, came from an event that we were recently at called Zymergen Experience. This was one of the first times that we kind of really sponsored an event. Had a more notable booth. We've done a couple so far, but this was a bigger one. And it was definitely some of the smartest, minds in many ways in supplements and in health. And, there's a lot of really, really insightful, high level questions, which meant that we had a lot of high level people come over to our booth, kind of get to know what we do. And we got to ask a lot of questions. And we had some really interesting takeaways from the event, and some just gaps that we heard, consistently from people that we talked to. And so we wanted to address it in a podcast today to hopefully, again, help you guys communicate more effectively to your patients, not to your colleagues, not to your friends, not to your classmates, but to your patients, so that you can ultimately drive more sales.
Yeah. I mean,
right.
it was really mind blowing.
Yeah, you were there. So, you can give your own perspective on it, but I think my biggest thing was like, man, a lot of these businesses on paper should outsell a lot of our clients in supplements, but none of them, like many of them, didn't come close. And it was just the things that we're going to talk about on this podcast are the reasons why.
Well, and those individuals are just, they have these big practices and it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're so smart.
And they believe in the supplements. They know that they help the patient, but we'll talk about it. But yeah, it was an eye-opening experience. I'll just put it that way. And so we're going to break it down in this episode. Logan and I put together 8 things that we really want you to take away from this episode to, again, help you effectively communicate to your patients and drive more sales. So we'll get right into it. So of the many things that happened at our booth, one of the ones that probably was the most like mind-boggling or kind of challenging, because it's like such the beginning. It's the beginning of kind of building a business or building a supplement business, is branding. And I can't tell you how many people came over to our booth, talked to myself, talked to Logan, talked to Noah on our team as well. And the name of their business, their brick and mortar practice, and the name of their supplements were completely disconnected. And they had some roundabout reason as to why. And those were always the same people that didn't have traction with their supplement sales. And so the first big point that I didn't realize was as big of a problem until we went to this event is your supplement brand should not be completely disconnected from your core business name. anytime you are marketing, you want to take advantage of the assets that you have. And so if I was to paint a picture to make it more obvious, imagine you move into a new city and you open up shop as a practice. Do you think you have less of an advantage than the person who's been there for 20 years in the same city? Yes, because they have name recognition, brand recognition, they have testimonials, they have all these different assets. And so, similarly, when you have a business and then you decide to start a new supplement line and has no relationship to your core business name, you're starting over. Like your
Right.
patients will not have it clear in their head. Your spouse, yourself, you probably forget the exact name of the supplement brand. And so, like there were so many different instances where people came over to us and it's like, how many businesses do you have? Like how, wait, these are all the same, but they have all different names. Like why? Like the clinic was different than the acupuncture part of their business was different than the IV drip portion of their business, which was different than their supplement line. It's like there was just no consistency. And it's like, I'm
Right.
confused. I do this. I care about this. I can't imagine a patient's perspective. And so it doesn't have to be the exact same name, but man, keep the colors like the same, keep like maybe a piece of the name still in there. And I think like Logan with your supplement line, like you guys found that nice happy medium.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we just, we looked at it and said, okay, we don't necessarily want the pharmacy name there. We don't want a Keystone Compounding Pharmacy, but it's Keystone Nutrition, right? It still rolls in with what the business at its core name is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you start going off the beaten path, and your pharmacy, I'll just use Keystone as Keystone Pharmacy, but also our supplement line is, Omega Nutrition, Supreme, or whatever you want to name it. The patients aren't going to know that, one, it's yours, and then two, they're going to try to find it somewhere else for cheaper because they're going to think that it's not directly related to your location, right? And you always want them to come back to you for those supplements, so that way it stays within your business. I think anyone who's kind of moving away from that, I think you're losing sales because people just get confused. They can't find it anywhere else, or they can't really even find it on your site because they're like, well, I can't find Dr. Johansson's brand. It's
Yeah.
something else. And it's so confusing for a consumer.
Yeah. So again, didn't realize it was as big of a problem. We had a number of, I don't know, I'd say probably 25% of the people that came to our booth had something that was confusing about their business name in relationship to their supplements. And so you already carry enough brands in your pharmacy or in your practice that are not your business's name. You don't need to add another one.
Right.
Keep it close, keep it similar. Just save yourself from that because you think it's some like clever thing for like, oh, what if I want to sell my practice or sell my pharmacy but not sell my supplements? Like, find 5 people that have done that, and then we'll have that conversation. But you are
Right.
planning for something that doesn't exist, and will probably not exist, and most people will end up bundling it together. So like, quit planning for that outcome that's likely not going to happen. So
Yeah.
there's our first takeaway um, from the event. Um, the second one, and I think kind of the speakers contribute to this because when you go to an event that's really high level and it's like this one was, there were some phenomenal speakers. Dr. Mark Hyman spoke at it, etc. They're going to break down information as if you are well, because you're their audience. So they're going to break down information, share resources, share slides, and use language that they know you understand because you are the audience in this room, right? But you are the audience for them. When you go home and you make content or you talk to your patients, you are not your audience. So meaning like the level of understanding and sophistication and expertise that you have is not equal to your patients. So just because Hyman and these other speakers spoke to you this way about explaining why the XYZ product was so great or XYZ nutrient was so great, that cannot be the exact way that you deliver that to your patients. And so the downside, in my opinion, of some of these events are your notes are almost useless in the sense of like you want to use them to get nitty gritty if you need to, or like very, quickly kind of reference a study, or also just give you more conviction, more confidence in what you're ultimately selling. But that is not how you need to deliver that message to your patients. And so many of the people that came over to our booth, when we were talking to them about content and kind of keywords that maybe they want to be found for, or content that they would make videos around, the majority of the time they would talk about and use language and say, I want to be found for things that frankly people don't look for. And so there's a number of different tools you can use to look at some of this data. I think like an easy one that's absolutely free will always be Google Trends. And if you want to take a look at like trends of a topic, that always tends to be a good indicator of maybe demand. But for example, berberine is searched over 1.7 million times monthly with different keyword variations of berberine, right? So I'll give you some other perspective. Magnesium searched over 14 million times monthly. A lot of people looking for magnesium. We could get into like topics like weight loss, and some of those categories are absolutely massive. You know what's not massive? Like medication adherence is
I can tell you a lot
not
of things that
are there's not many people searching for it. So like, don't talk about it, or don't use that language if you're trying to talk about it. Like if you want to talk about medication adherence, you could talk about like, hey, you want to be a little bit more consistent with, taking your medicine or taking your supplements so that you can ultimately get the maximum benefits. Here's a solution that we might have. Like that's a lot better way than saying, let me tell you about medication adherence, because you've lost people. Most people don't know what adherence is and definitely cannot spell it. So even if they thought the video was interesting and then they wanted to like Google search to know more about it, like they'll never get there. So
Right.
You need to look for and talk about what people are talking about. And a phrase that I would remind you of is, you cannot change the desires of the market. You can simply channel them towards your product or service. So understand what people want, understand what people are looking for, and then find a way to use that to massage those people towards your product or your offering. But don't try to get someone interested in something that there is no interest in. Like that is a much more challenging thing. If you take a look at like product market fit, if you've ever heard that expression before, like it is really hard to create new categories, right? Like, imagine coming out with, like a phone that could also be like a spatula. Like I'm getting extreme here and it's just coming top of the head. Like, selling someone on the idea that their phone needs to be able to be baked at 200 plus degrees. Like you're trying to find like a whole new segment of people that maybe are interested in that. And again, that's extreme, but there's a lot of different examples where products or services people came out with didn't work. And it was more often because they were trying to find like fit within something absolutely new that wasn't like, didn't have behavior built around, consumer behavior, etc. So like that is really, really, really hard. So don't fight that trend, because it's much easier to just know what people are already looking for and then get in front of those people with your offer.
Right. Yeah.
Can you think of an example? Like I know that there's a better example for like product market fit, like something that flopped. Like I'm trying to think of like, I don't know, almost like, those like Snuggies, like to an extent, like worked but didn't, because people didn't really want to wear the blanket. You want to be able to get it on and off like really easily. Like what are some other trends with like consumer products over the years that just didn't work?
There was that product that was like a wristwatch, and it was supposed to like adjust the polarity around your wrist, and it's supposed to have all these like medical, and it was just like hokey pokey BS.
Okay.
And it was just a total, like nobody bought into it. Because the research behind it was all horrible, and not something that I would recommend. And to build off that, it would be like talking about the electron chain transport system and how that's going to improve energy. Like no one is going to understand that, and no one's going to say, "Hey, I just want to look up electron chain transport system." Like no one's going to do that. So that makes it tough.
Here's a couple, because I just Google searched, failed products. One you could argue is, and we're getting that way, this direction, but it still doesn't mean that it wasn't really, really hard, and still is really hard. Is like those virtual reality headsets. Like Apple's making some strides and Facebook's making some strides, but look into how much they've spent. They've lost tens of billions of dollars developing those products and trying to get people interested in wearing, ski goggles on their face. Like that's a whole new consumer behavior, and the tech isn't quite there, and it's really, really, really challenging. I'm seeing some old ones here with like the Heinz squirt bottles when they like changed them to like the purple and the red, or
Oh yeah.
there's a number of different products here that are kind of popping up, but hopefully illustrating the point of like breaking into a new market, like although exciting, is also really, really, really hard. So just make it easier on yourself and just talk about the stuff that people are already looking for.
Yeah, and I would say, to that point is when you are talking about those things, how do you make it interesting enough for somebody to continue watching whatever piece of content you've made? It makes it difficult, right? I mean, if I watch something that's weird or new to me and I don't understand the first few seconds, I'm just going to the next thing.
You're gone.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that kind of brings right into point 3, which is, focusing on the first, few seconds of the video. To Logan's point, it's really hard, especially if they don't understand what you're talking about. But even if they do understand what you're talking about, your hook is often what is referred to as like the first couple seconds of your video. It's so crucial. So a couple things I think we'll do with this episode, I'll turn it into a checklist, but there's a really good book called Breakthrough Advertising. It was like a $400 book. Now you can get it for like $125. I do think it's worth buying. It's kind of like the holy grail for copywriting books. But it has a section, and we'll turn it into a checklist, and we'll obviously give credit, or we'll find a way to give you kind of the ideas. But it goes through 38 different ways to kind of dress up your hook, right? So an example of that could be, dramatizing how hard it was to produce the claim. So the example that they give there is, when Jen's finished designing this candle holder, we had to invent a whole new kind of candle, right? Another one was like, accuse the claim of being too good. And the hook that they used was, is it immoral to make money this easily, right? Like that's another clever way of saying like, hey, this is a great, way to make money fast, right? Another way to say like, man, this feels immoral. Like now I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? Right? There's a level of like curiosity and interest. And so using that with supplements, using that with health and wellness, I see a lot of people that will like make videos and they'll open it with, today I'd like to tell you about, or let me tell you about X. And both of those and a lot of those variations that are similar are just boring. And that might hurt some feelings, and it's not meant to. It's hopefully just meant to correct it so that your videos perform better. But like the first 2 or 3 seconds are huge. So instead of saying something like, let me tell you about magnesium, which is dull, right? Using something instead like, this magnesium could be the difference between jumping out of bed because you feel so rested and hitting the snooze button until you oversleep. Like totally different hooks, significantly more interested, and that was kind of off the top of my head for the second one, and there's better ones than that, but like, let me tell you about, or today I'd like to tell you about, let's talk about X, like could not be worse. So there's a lot of different resources for hooks. I think something that will help you is observing other people's content that's not even in the health space, so you're not kind of in that thought bubble, and seeing how, extreme examples like Mr. Beast, who's built, the most traction on social media of any person in human history. Like, how does he open his videos? What, kind of styles, does he use to capture attention? And maybe if that's not your flavor, there's other YouTube channels or other, large followings on social media. Take a look at some of your favorite TikToks or, different things. Like, their beginning parts of their videos are really, really good. And if you look at them and you kind of study them, you'll find takeaways that you can utilize for your own niche, your own industry, using a similar kind of framework. So again, don't stay in the thought bubble of health and wellness. But even if you do, there's some amazing creators in the space. Even go watch some of Logan's content. Like Logan's content, I think, is progressively obviously getting better. But if you go back like 12 months, 16 months, like, it was a lot more dull, a lot less energy, yeah. Like, but I mean, everyone gets better, and it's not to like, it's noble that you've continued and gotten better over, with a lot of repetition. Because, some people don't, work hard and, progressively get better. But point is, like, you're probably not going to be great in the beginning, but if you do a little bit of studying, you'll get better faster. And so, yeah, focus on the beginning parts of it. Like, does it make you curious? Does it pull you in? Is it bold? Is there substance to it? Because if it's not, the rest of your video could be absolutely incredible, but you'll never have the chance for someone to listen to it.
I always like when I'm scrolling through videos, whatever catches my attention in a video that I watch, and I go, okay, why did I watch this? And then reversing that back and saying, oh, it's because they started off the video with this one supplement could drastically improve your sleep. And I'm like, well, which one is it? Like, I'm curious.
Mm-hmm.
Can I guess which one it is? Now, I'm a nerd, and that's why I'm curious about it. But things of that nature, it can be really appealing because people want to know, okay, then what is it? It's that kind of like surprise factor, like opening up a Christmas present on Christmas. You want to know what's inside the box. So what's the answer to that question?
No,
Those are some ways
100%.
I like to do it. But so that's an easy trick, is anything that you watch, figure out why you wanted to watch it and then recreate it into a video.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Even a small one that, like, we don't have in our bullet point, but it's just kind of coming to, is like being somewhat thoughtful around the sound that you're using if you're going to use one. I'll throw an extreme example here. I don't know if there's like a great um, like strategy or like protocol to follow per se, but I'll use this example from the other day. Like, you're familiar with the Titanic like music, right? That
Mm-hmm.
like often gets played in the back of videos, and it's typically for like something inspirational, and then like some amazing moment happens like at the right drop. Um, you know, there was a couple weeks ago, Tom Izzo, who's Michigan State's basketball coach, his son plays for Michigan State, and he finally scored his first points in the collegiate game. It was like this big thing. And I probably saw 10 or 15 different videos where they just changed the background music of like when it fell into the hoop. And it was all songs that like we all know. And so like you're waiting on the drop, like for the video. And even if you're seeing it for the first time, like you kind of have an idea like, oh, something amazing is about to happen because of like the flow of the video. Um, Thinking about that too a little bit with your content, because I've seen some really good videos where it gets paired with like a really soft, kind of put you to sleep music, and it drains the video. And so if you're going to use background noises, if you're going to use any sort of audio, being thoughtful around that and maybe not just grabbing the first one that comes to mind. It seems excessive, and we'll talk about maybe some solutions for maybe not doing your editing, but it does impact how the video is received. And I think it's glossed over. So that just came to me. I had to say it. And even with your videos, I mean, you had like, sound in yours, and I think like progressively, I'm sure you've gotten more thoughtful around what that sound should be based on what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Sound is tough. What I will say about sound is, one, depending on how you can get the source of the sound is difficult sometimes, because of copyright things and depending on how you're posting. But it does make the video more pleasant for the individual. So even if you have that sound too high or too low, just the volume can make a significant difference versus just the sound itself.
Yeah.
So I found that sound does play a decent role. I still struggle with it though, because
Yeah. No, it's hard.
finding just the right music can be difficult. But also finding maybe topics that fit with that around a popular song. So one song that always comes to my mind is Bruno Mars. I want to say that one of his songs was like, oh man, how did it go? He's had so many different ones, but anyway, he had a song that is burned into my brain for a long time, and you can find kind of a way to get a topic around that. So like you said, the Titanic, I could maybe bring in and be talking about a weight loss product, and then maybe during that drop a thing of like fat and be like, this could be the amount of fat that you could lose
Yeah.
in X amount of time. Right. It's about using that to your advantage to pull the video together.
Yeah. I think maybe to make it easy for people at like listening for some takeaways is like, don't just slap on a song, like be somewhat thoughtful. I think to an extent you like sounds can improve a video, but also sounds can ruin a video. I think maybe if your baseline goal is like, how do I make sure I add sound but don't ruin my video? And like maybe that's just like your bar. But like make sure it's not louder than you, make sure it's not a super slow, like put people to sleep song if that's not like the energy you're bringing to the video. Like little things like that. I think maybe another way to put it is just like, just don't ruin your video with the sound that you choose. And I think a lot of videos get ruined. So like at least make that your goal. It doesn't have to be the perfect match. Just don't screw it up. But on the topic of making content, we were kind of talking before we started the podcast, so wanted to get you talking about this. But like, as someone who's made probably 100 plus videos now at this point, where you're talking in them, like, what's a framework that you found to be helpful for you to figure out like, how do I want to talk about this subject?
Yeah, I've got a framework that I've kind of stolen, pieced together from some of the better collaborators online. And really, I try to break it down into my video should be right around 60 seconds because most people just don't have the attention span to stay on longer than that, right? They want to flip to the next video. So that's kind of one key is how do I get my content within that 60-second time frame? Then we've already kind of talked about the hook. First thing I want to build is how am I going to get somebody interested in the video and how do I keep them there? I want to say that the stat is most people watch a video for like 3 seconds before they flip to the next. So you've got 3 seconds to figure out
if that, for sure.
How do I keep them? Then from there, once you've dropped your hook, is really going into the point. So if my hook is this one type of magnesium will drastically improve your cardiovascular health. My next point should be, okay, well, which one is it, or why is it this specific magnesium? So if I'm talking about magnesium taurate, magnesium taurate is beneficial because of this. And then maybe here's a study. So that would be point 2 is like, here's why it's important. Here's a study. And then point 3 could be something along the lines of a story that you're really wrapping around to bring the relationship with the patient or the individual with the product. So, or if you have cardiovascular health issues, this is one supplement you must know, right? And then bringing that into a story of like, I have this patient who has cardiovascular disease. Here's why I started them on magnesium taurate. Cool. And then going to your points. And that story is a really good bonus because people can relate to the stories. So I almost all my videos are generally around a patient experience that I've had. Like, for example, I'm doing one on iron right now, and everyone knows that when you take iron, you generally get constipated. So my hook is me in a bathroom saying, everyone knows how unpleasant it is to be stuck in a bathroom, not being able to go because you're constipated. And then here's an iron product that can avoid that, and here's why it's beneficial. And then you want to go to your call to action. So you've gone over your hook, you've gone over your points. What do you want that person to do? Do you want them to follow you on social media? Do you want them to buy a product from you? Do you just want them to, happy that they learn more information, right? You're going to want one of the first two. You want something out of that content that you made. So, hey, some of the easy hooks are like, hey, follow us for more information about blank, GI health, whatever it happens to be, or check the link below if you suffer from cardiovascular disease and want to improve your life. Give them those call to action so that they can actually act. Because if I don't tell you what to do, you're just going to be like, okay, and move on. And then the last thing is building out the description. And this really helps make your content more visible. And so the description is what you write within, you've got your video and then you've got, okay, well, what's this video about? Well, this is, did you know magnesium taurate, cardiovascular health, hashtag cardiovascular, hashtag magnesium. So these are what people are going to be searching for. We're going to be looking at other content that's similar to yours so that they can actually find it when they're viewing. And so that can be a really important piece, because if I was making a content and I just put Michigan, well, Michigan and iron, don't really go together unless you're talking about Iron Mountain. A little shout out there for you. Right. So just know that those pieces are really important. And the other thing is, like, when you're doing that, not to write to colleagues, or like not to speak in the video like you're talking to a colleague. And I know we kind of addressed it earlier, is if I'm talking to you, Chris, and I say, well, hey, we're going to be talking about the Krebs cycle and how we're going to improve the transport of
You lost me.
into pyruvate, and why pyruvate's so important. You're gonna be like,
And
what
I've
the
heard
heck
you
is
mention
pyruvate?
the Krebs cycle before, and I'm still lost, right? So I think
Right.
like I'm almost the perfect example of like I have some general awareness of some of these topics because we work with so many practices and pharmacies in this space, but I still don't. So like if you get into the weeds, you've lost me, and I will check out. And so like that was again one of the huge things from the booth is like people were like adamant they wrote their own blogs because they want to have all their information. They want to check it twice, and they want to use high level language, and they want to cite all these 7 different, studies and sources. And like, I get that. Like, I get the core intention of like wanting to make sure the information's great. But on the flip side, you're going to talk to people, or like you are going to produce content that no one but your colleagues understands, and your colleagues are not your customers.
Right. And so easy ways to get around that is explaining, either dumbing it really far down and saying where you make your energy, which comes from the Krebs cycle. You can spin it in there if you still want to talk about it, but explain it, or put it into a way that consumers can understand. So another example would be, magnesium is really important for making melatonin because it goes through the pathway and makes serotonin, and serotonin converts into melatonin. So this means that that helps you fall asleep, right? So use those kind of transition words to help the consumer understand what you're trying to say if you have a harder time dumbing it down. And I don't mean like consumers are dumb, but they're just not going to understand everything.
Yep.
So that's why I use a lot of different analogies, and most of the time they're not always perfect, but a really good example I always like to use is for energy reasons. And I always talk about when you drive, you need gas to go forward, right?
Yep.
And then wait for them to say, yeah. And then I go, perfect. That's just like vitamin B in making energy. If you don't have any vitamin B in your body, you can't make energy. If you don't have any gas in your car, you can't go. So this is why you need to take vitamin B. Now, also, you don't always, that one tank of gas doesn't last forever. You have to refuel every once in a while, right?
Right.
And I say, yep. And I go, perfect. Same thing with vitamin B. It only, because it's a water soluble vitamin, and that just means it stays in the, it doesn't get stored in the fat. It goes out of your body in 4 to 6 hours. That's why they call things 5-hour energy, because it's the middle between 4 and 6. And so every 5 hours, you should be repleting your vitamin B. And so that's why you should take it twice a day, like multivitamins. And they go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So you have to make it into something that they can easily understand. And analogies for me are the easiest. I just try to figure out the dumbest thing I can think of off the top of my head. And you could use things like Star Wars. I've used Star Wars. I've used things like the car one's my favorite. I've even used like fishing. Different fishing analogies for talking about receptors and why hormones come in, and it takes 90 days for the body to build these new receptors. And it's like fishing in a stream. If I have one rod and I've got 30,000 fish in my stream, I can only catch so many fish. But after 90 days of hard work, I've got more money. I can buy more fishing rods. Now I can catch more fish. Just like now I can catch more hormone, and my body will then have more hormone that it can use. So you can make these analogies. You'll have to find kind of your own niche.
That's a good one. Well, and I think like where you are in the world matters. Like, fishing in Michigan makes a ton of sense, and ton of people can relate to it. So you'll find your own nuance and you'll find your own stories, but the core principle of using stories, using analogies, using transitions like which means or so that means, to where you could take complicated topics and make them more understandable.
Right.
Can't recommend that enough. Like, there's a lot of things we're not saying right now, from like click-through rate and CTAs or CPCs. Like, there's a lot of technical marketing stuff we're purposely not using because our core audience is understanding or trying to understand more about marketing. So think about that as well. Again, when you're talking to your patients, and don't just leave events with like these great nuggets that you heard Dr. Hyman say, for example, and then go say them exactly the same way to your patients, because it just will not land.
Oh.
So that brings up the next point, which is point number 6, which is delegating / learning from content experts. We kind of touched on this with like hooks, but like you might have some really, really good information, but it is astounding how much like the lighting matters, the camera angle matters, the audio quality matters, the context of the background matters, and the editing, right? I think an important thing to remember, because it sounds like, man, this is so much work to like produce a good video. And it is, right? If you listen to people that have built significant channels, or even you think of like TV networks and TV shows, like there's a lot of work into figuring out how to make something engaging and captivating and interesting. And so first and foremost, it should be a lot of work. The second point that I'll make is you are not competing against other people spewing health information. You are competing against all the other options that people could spend their time could utilize or spend their time. So like you need to be just as engaging or more engaging than like the little cooking TikToks or little cooking videos or the latest sporting event highlight or the latest political thing or the latest like pick your fighter. That is who you're competing against. And so when people are scrolling on their phones, scrolling on their devices, like for them to stop and choose to watch you means that what you are talking about needs to be as interesting or more interesting than, again, those options. So if you spend 5 minutes and scroll on your phone and it's really tailored to you because you've kind of trained the algorithm over time, like think to yourself, would I rather watch my video than what I just scrolled past for the last 5 minutes? And I bet you probably scrolled past some pretty awesome videos, and that's why your screen time is a lot higher than you probably want people to know. It's because it's good at feeding you stuff that you're interested in. So just know that is who you are competing against with the content that you put out. And it's not an easy fight. I think it's one that you can do very well, but it is not, again, easy. Like, it is going to take some thought, and that's kind of the purpose of this podcast, is to help you have a little bit more thought and kind of take a look at the key areas that you need to focus on.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one other point too is looking at the videos that, even if let's say magnesium is a really great example. I've seen multiple magnesium videos online ever since I've, obviously done research and things on my phone, and it knows that those are things I'm looking at. Yep. And what's interesting is when you look at the different videos, you can see the different engagements in those videos, and you can start saying, okay, this video did really well. What are they doing in the video? What does that video look like? How did they kind of break it apart? What does it say? Because I've seen those videos and they're just random actors that I know that they just paid to say these things. So they're not coming from an authoritative view. It's more of just, hey, they did really well because they said, put a few spritz in your mouth. I feel so much better. It's got 17 different ingredients. It will change your life. Like, that's what people want to hear. So you don't always have to think that what you're saying is the most important. Sometimes it's just figuring out, what do people want to hear and what do they want to see?
Yeah. And if you have a great product or a great service, like, you shouldn't feel bad about delivering your message in a way that gets people to want to move forward with you. Because if you have their best intentions in mind and you really do feel like you have the best option on the market or one of the best options, like, you can feel good knowing that, outside of making claims that aren't true, which I would not advise doing, like, you should speak in a way that gets people to want to move forward. It's just, I guess, the easiest way to put it. You'll have your chance to show them how smart you are, if that is what they want to know. But if they just want to hear enough to get them to buy, then like only give them enough to buy. You know,
Right.
you don't have to give them everything, right? Like I'll be the first to raise my hand. Like at some point, I probably should do it because I've thought about it like a ton of times over the past couple of weeks, Logan. Like I just want to text Logan and say, hey, Logan, I want to live to be 125. Like what supplement regimen? Like throw price out the window. Like what supplements should I be taking? And have him just build me a bundle. And I actually don't want Logan to explain why. I just want to be like, I know Logan knows his stuff. Just tell me what I need to take. That's who I am as a buyer. Like I am just like that. When I recognize a subject expert, I don't insert my own opinion or try to do my own research. That's just how I am, right? And you have people like that too, that don't want to know the reasons why. They don't care to know maybe why methylated, vitamins are so great and like all the nuance of it. Just give them the quick and easy sometimes, and that's like it. And be okay with the fact that they don't care as much as you do.
Right. Right. Oh, 100%. I think part of it is practitioners don't want to sound salesy, and they feel like if they do something like that, they sound like a salesman. What are your thoughts on how should people be coming across? Like, how should you be selling or trying to make that sales move in these content or even within your practice if you're just talking to a patient?
Yeah. So I think one of the things to unpack there is like sales often gets put into a bad connotation, but it shouldn't, right? Like one, your business is not a charity. It can't keep its doors open without, dollars. Like we do live in a capitalist society. Like you have to pay for things. So like don't cast a negative light. Money can be incredible. It's energy. It's oxygen. It allows you to do amazing things. Some people use it for good. Some people use it for bad, air quotes. So like don't cast it in a negative light. I think another thing to think about is like the options. So, patients can work with you, they can move forward with your product, or they can move forward with a lot of alternatives on the market. If you feel comfortable with the alternatives and you think that there's a lot of great solutions, maybe your product's not that great, but if you feel like you have a really quality product that's best for patients and can help them improve their health, whether that's a product or a service, you should want to be better at sales because you should want more people to work with you because if you do care about the patient, they're better off in your hands than in others, right?
Right.
So I think like that's another way to kind of look at it. But if you don't want to sound salesy in your content, in your videos, something that I always talk about, which is selling off your back foot. And I got this, idea from someone else. I can't remember exactly who it came from, where I heard it, but I think it's such a good way to do it. Like I'll use the example of like a spouse or a significant other. Like the person that like, have you ever noticed that the person that always was interested in you and always liked you was the one that you didn't end up like probably being with? Like it was the person like you couldn't get. It was like the girl that like you had a crush on that like didn't like you is like the one that like just always stuck in your head, right? Like people don't tend to like things that are always available, that are always there, that like can get whenever they want. There's a little bit of like people like the FOMO. They want to have what they can't have, right? So kind of similarly, when you're making content and you're kind of wrapping up a video, like sell off your back foot in the sense of just make it seem like you don't really care if they move forward with you or not, right? Like for example, saying things like, hey, if you're interested, I'll leave the link in the bio if this is something that you're looking for. If not, like, hope you learned something. Like, it's a very casual way of like kind of massaging someone towards like taking the next step. Or, hey, this is the product we recommend to our patients, but if you're not going to get this product, like, look for one that has these ingredients because they're really, really crucial. Again, people are going to choose your supplement, but it makes it seem as though like you don't care if they buy yours or not. Just like find one that has the best ingredients. That's like all I care about. So it comes across as a more casual kind of close versus I see this all the time. And I think it just comes from like TV commercials and car salesmen, to an extent. Shout out car salesman, not a bad way. I'm just thinking like old school TV, or like radio ads that you hear, like just kind of typically bad marketing is maybe what I put it, or just more like direct response. Like some people straight up sound in their videos, they don't say this, but it almost sounds like you're saying, please buy from us. Like it sounds needy. It sounds like you want the sale. And it comes across that way. Or ending your video with shop now at jamespharmacy.com. Like super cheesy. Like, hey, if you're looking for more information, like shoot us an email, shoot us a message, give us a call. We'll be happy to help you out. A lot more casual and a lot more inviting too. Like, call us at 906. It's like, no one's going to do that either. Just like make it seem like you're not interested in the transaction, and people will be more interested in buying from you. Right. I even think sometimes you could not mention the product name. Like, hey, we've got a couple products that we recommend. But again, big thing would be look for a product with these ingredients. Like, no one's going to actually look for the ingredients themselves. They're going to direct message you and email you or comment and say, hey, what was the products that you recommend? Like, you didn't mention them in the video. Which products? I've literally seen comments this week from clients where someone said, hey, you said you were going to link something in the comments and you didn't link it. What was the product? Like, if you don't do it, people will come for it. Is another thing too. So when you're like over the top, like, let me tell you about our product. Like, it looks like an ad. It feels like an ad. It feels like you want money, and people just don't like that. There's just no other way to put it. So don't do it.
I agree. I actually had a patient today in my office, and we were talking about hormones. And one of the things I asked her was, are you taking a multivitamin? She goes, no, I don't take any supplements. I said, well, let me just tell you about, if there was one supplement I could take for the rest of my life, this is the one I would use. Once again, that's a hook. So kind of hooked her into like, why is this? Why is that one that you would recommend? And I walked her through why it was important. I said, if this is something that you're interested in, here's how I would take it. If it's not, no problem. I just wanted to educate you on something that may, improve your overall health and well-being. And then, we kind of talked about some other things. We took care of a hormone test, and I was like, hey, just before we leave, I wanted to make sure you didn't want the supplement, right? And I said, it's no big deal. Like, I just wanted to make sure you understood why it would be important for you. She goes, no, I want that. And the whole time I was actually trying not to sell her on it. I just wanted to inform her on why it was beneficial. Yeah. And so that's a really great example of kind of selling off the back foot. Now, I've also had times where people at the end of I wrap things up and I'm like, okay, here's why you should be taking XYZ, or here's why I'm recommending this. They're like, you're a really good salesman. And I go, did I sound like a salesman? And they go, no, you were just really good at explaining everything. Yeah. I said, oh, well, I was just really looking at, how do I help you reach your health goals? Yeah. And that's a good way to kind of come back at it versus kind of like killing off that like salesy messages. Like, I'm just trying to make you feel better. And I know that these products are going to do that for you. So like, I hope I didn't come off as sounding salesy, but I know that this is going to work. Yeah. And a lot of times, well, I'm like, oh, yeah, you're fine, sweetie. Like, it's okay. Like,
yeah. Well, I think the important thing there that I want to make sure is clear is like, we're still telling you to kind of ask for the sale. We're just telling you to do it differently. And like, we are acknowledging that you want the sale. We want the sale for you too. We're just helping you do it in a different way that actually leads to more sales than maybe what you think would lead to more sales. So like, our objectives are still the same here. It's just the delivery of the message matters. It just does, man, I had another point that I had, like, it was a story, but it's losing me, but, or I lost it. But either way, like, maybe it'll come back to me, but you're going to sell more than you think. It's just not the way that you think leads to sales is maybe the easy. Oh, that's what I was going to say. You kind of give the example of like, hey, I just care about your, health and wellness. Like, an interesting thing to say in a video, because it's kind of the whole, like, I forget the exact technical term, but it's like, what's it called where like you make fun of yourself in a way, and
like
then
a damaging admission.
Damaging admission. There it is. I was going to say like a damning something, but I knew it wasn't that. Like, when you have a damaging admission of like, hey, I'm really, really, really mean, but I'll tell you the truth. Like, when you say that and you admit that thing about yourself, what happens is people will assume that the next thing that you say is true because you're willing to say something negative about yourself. So if you say in your content or in a consult, like, hey, this is going to sound really, really salesy, but I just want you to understand how highly I think of this product. like that comes across as like, hey, I know this sounds like I'm trying to sell you, but like I just like this product's just the best. And people are much more willing to buy because they feel like you're owning up to the fact that like, hey, I'm kind of hard selling you here, but like it's just a really, really good product. And it's
Right.
half the time how you say it too. It's like the tonality, it's the body language, which is like hard to teach. And I think it comes from reps.
Yeah.
But like I think the point maybe to round this out is like so many people are so close. It's a bunch of little things that like takes you from like really struggling to sell a product to selling a lot of it. And it's not like any one thing. So I hope like a lot of these things, like you walk away with a lot of things that you can improve on because it is a lot of little things. But man, like uh, what I'm trying to say is like you're really closer than you think. Like it's just it's so many just like small micro improvements which on paper won't blow you away, but it's just changing things from like buy from us at xyz.com to like, hey, if you're interested, like I'll put the link in the comment. If you have any questions, shoot us a message. Like subtle changes, nothing radical there, but it has a significant impact on how people receive it and ultimately the amount of sales that it leads to.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I agree with you there. It's a one last thing, because I don't want us to go too much further on this topic, but sometimes it's easy to change the word from sale to help for practitioners. Like you're not trying to sell them on something, you're trying to get them something that's going to help them. And if you can change your mindset to that, then you won't have that weird guilt like, oh, I made this person buy this, $500 test when they really only needed a $200 test. Not that we would ever do that, but you get the point.
Yep.
Now,
That's a good way to say it.
So you make the content, right? I've made content. You talk about like, hey, I want you to buy now, but a lot of places they didn't start with content. They don't really have their social media built. So how do you get that word out to individuals so that way they can actually find you?
Yeah. So we talk about content and distribution. So content being like the video, content being a blog, content being information, right? And then distribution is like getting it in front of people. So like said another way, part of what makes Walmart so appealing is if you can get your product into Walmart, you get a lot of distribution. It's like, man, I get my product in 30,000 locations. That's distribution, right? Now, the product is the exact same, but you're just getting more reach. So going back to the example of the event that we went to, like Hyman gave a presentation and there was 300 people in the room, right? Same information could have been shared to 30,000 people, could have been shared to 5 people in the room, but in this event, it was like 300 some odd people, right? So that was his distribution. So when you make content, you are not entitled to distribution. So you don't get unlimited views. And so I think where content can be challenging is sometimes you'll make content, you'll get 10 views, you'll get 20 views. And you automatically assume that your video is not good. But that's not necessarily the case. It's just that it didn't reach people to, kind of in a way, see if it was good. Right. And so, ideally where you want to get to is you have content. And then if the math makes sense, you can pay for distribution and make more than what it costs to get the distribution. So it will surprise you. It'll end up being more than you thought that you would spend because as the math makes sense, you'll end up spending more and more. But like we have clients that spend, like we'll have a client that probably spends 6 figures this month on ads. And it's just distribution. But it's because the math makes sense for them to spend that much because they're making more than that and then some on that, spend. And so, making good content is part of it, but having distribution is the other. And so if you don't have, a team around you or people around you that understand things like paid ads or email marketing or different forms of distribution, you might have great content, but no one ever gets to see it. And so if you take a look at your views on a video, don't take that as necessarily a reflection of how good it is. Like in some sense, that might be some feedback of how maybe entertaining the video is. Like if it gets 1,000 views and it has no likes, like it probably isn't very good. But if it gets 20 views, it might just be you had no distribution because you have no following. And so you might have said some incredible things that just didn't get in front of anybody. So, don't make content and not have a process or a strategy around distribution, because otherwise making content will not be very fruitful. If you simply rely on organic growth and building your followers and getting more views like over time, it's a very, very painful, doable, but painful process. And so if you're looking to get more traction quickly, paid ads and things of that nature are going to help you get your message out into more people, in front of more eyeballs. And if the math makes sense and you're able to make more than you get back, you will progressively kind of inch your way up, or jump forward with kind of how much you spend. And I think, if we would have gone back even months ago for certain clients, like they would only be some clients months ago were spending $50 a day, $100 a day in ads that are now spending a couple thousand. And that's a massive jump, but it's again, just because the math makes sense. So don't let the numbers scare you, because again, they're not spending that amount of money and just pouring it down the drain, or burning it. They are spending that because there is a reason. So again, these are all strategies to help you make your content more interesting and more appealing, but you might still need help with distribution to get it in front of more people.
Makes sense.
So
yeah, it's interesting because those things compound too. So you spend money to get in front of those eyeballs, and now Susie Q's liked my video, and now I've invited her to follow my Facebook, and now she's free. So now anytime I post, I know she sees my stuff. And so it's really interesting to watch that grow. And I know I've seen it within my own practices. It's really starting to compound. And so it'll be really exciting to see, as you continue to get that distribution, what that will do to your business.
Yep. Yeah. Well said. Well said. All right. So we've talked your ear off with 8 ways to make your content more interesting, to help you effectively communicate more. But again, we walked away from a great trade show, great information. I don't think it'll be the last time that we go to this trade show or a trade show like it. And I think we'll have similar takeaways. But hopefully one of you guys will come up to us at a podcast and say, I heard that episode, I listened, and I don't have 6 different business names. I have one, because that would be, we'd love to hear that. So let's start with the easy stuff. But again, thanks for listening to another episode. Here's our soft sell off the back foot. Like, subscribe. If you found the information valuable. If you didn't, give us a thumbs down because it wasn't good. But if you found it helpful, we appreciate the kind words. We appreciate the likes, the subscribes, anything you so choose. But again, we'll be back in future episodes trying to help more patients find quality practices, quality pharmacies, and helping you as pharmacies and practices be better business owners and get more people to want to work with you. So again, thank you for listening to the Money Medicine Podcast. I'm joined as always by Logan Morse, PharmD, and all the titles that you can listen to from previous episodes if you haven't. And we will see you guys next time.